Microphone check, 1, 2, what is this? It's the 5'7" assassin in the podcast business. I am your host, Rohan Patra, the Rap Music Plug, at your service. The Rap Music Plug podcast presented by QLC TV is the remedy to the I don't have anything good to listen to problem. Through in-depth album and song reviews, as well as artist interviews and general rap commentary sprinkled in between on all of what the mainstream and underground rap scenes have to offer, this is your one-stop shop to knowing what to add to your queue, play next, or pop into your record player. Welcome to the show.
Live from the continuing apocalypse. This is State of the Game, Free Music Empire State of the Game, Volume 54, still here. That's right. I am your host, and I'll tell you something. I won't clip my toenails with a fingernail clipper. I'll wait it out till the toenail clipper comes in the mail. You got to stand for something or you fall for anything. I'm Dan O. My co-host in this journey to the center of music is someone, if you meet him at a flea market and he asks to paint you, that's his art. Respect it. It's K. Diggy. Thank you for joining me, K. Diggy. Our guest, returning guest, we're calling this Threesome 2.
Nice.
This is the Rap Music Plug. He sails through these social media streets like Wally West through Central City, you know, boots to the ground, everywhere but nowhere at once. Welcome back to the program. Thank you for showing up here. I appreciate it.
Appreciate having me back on. I had a great time last time, and I'm looking really forward to chopping it up about these comps and discuss all that. And follow me at the Rap Music Club podcast. About it.
You go through some of the stuff I go through. You get to interview people. You get to do cool stuff, right? With the Rap Music Plug, subscribe on YouTube. I am always like stupid appreciative of what I'm able to do and talk to these people. It's fantastic. So, by the way, catch up on the newest Haram review. Put a lot of time in. I appreciated that. So,
appreciate that.
But yes, you reviewed Bushido for Free Music Empire. How was that experience?
It was, first of all, again, thank you for giving me the chance to actually write for you guys. I actually, funny enough, used to do only written reviews back when, so this is 2013 to about 2015, for about 2.5 years when I was in university, actually end of high school, early university. And I really enjoyed it. And I hadn't picked up a pen or a typewriter. That's what I did. I typed this all typewriter and I faxed it to Dan. But yeah, I hadn't done that in a long time. And it was a great experience. And it was a lot to talk about when it comes to Bushido, because I personally am not a person that like always loves and jumps for a compilation. I tend to be someone, like, as I say in the review, the things that you can't usually expect with a compilation are the things I tend to really love about like the album experience, like the narrative, the flow, the sequencing, the cohesion, and those kinds of things, the theme. And there's obviously those elements in a compilation, but not to the same degree and not in the same way. So I didn't really know what to expect with Bushido, other than I knew it would be good because I like all the Mello Music Group artists. And overall, I think they satisfied their objective. And I don't know if you want to get into what I thought that was really.
Yeah, no, you laid out 4 objectives that, like, main objectives that do you think compilations really, should be viewed through as a lens, and highlighting the diversity of the particular group of artists, displaying their artists' greatest hits, or satisfying artists' work within a specific theme. And the 4th is a straightforward talent showcase with no other qualifier. And yeah, there's a lot there. I think, and it's interesting. You kind of brought up like I'm an album guy, right? I love albums. I love track sequencing. I love all of that stuff. And there, I'm not alone. There's like there's a heavy body of people who prefer that. There's
Mhm.
also a heavy group of people who just kind of want to click through stuff. So I wonder if label compilations satisfy that need. If you're like more of a singles person, that you'd be more willing to kind of click through. But you know, I'm only guessing because
That's a good point. I never thought of it that it actually satisfies that single person. Because again, I'm not a compilation guy. I'm like the anti-single. Straight up,
right.
like unless I know it's on an album, I don't even really care. Unless you're like an artist I love, I'm just like I don't really not gonna waste my time to click one song unless I really love you. So that's a good point. I think it might actually satisfy those people that don't want to sit through a whole thing and just want to play a little bit and then just dip because it usually will satisfy your need there.
Yeah.
And okay, Diggy. I mean, you remember when Drake realized that his audience had a low attention span, and so he started calling his albums playlists just to trick
Yeah,
them.
the More Life album / compilation,
Imagine
whatever
Drake
that
just
was.
tricking these young people, just being like, "It's a playlist," and it's just an album that he called a playlist. It's fantastic. Good for him.
I mean, that's what I mean. The More Life was interesting because I mean, all of there was no flow to it. Like all the songs, I think it kind of ties back to what you guys were saying about the singles approach. I mean, there was really no flow to the album or I'm sorry, the playlist.
Right.
But you can't deny that there was some like really great song. Really well, there were some
No,
really
there's a
solid
couple.
songs.
There was a couple really like I really fucked with the intro. Like the
Yep.
Free Smoke, like just the way it comes in and like that beat, it's like just such fuckboy vibes, but it's so fun. Just like it's
He's
like
so
the
good at it.
absolute like fuckboy vibe, and I just can't
He's
get
so
enough
good
of
at
it.
that.
He's so good at it.
No, I mean,
And so that's what it did. Like, so no one can criticize him for like, yo, like all you did was just record a bunch of songs and put them together, because it's like a playlist. So it's supposed to be evaluated in those terms. So that's kind of how you get around it, or how he got around it.
Took the expectations away.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. It's the first date versus the Netflix and chill. You're just like, all right, we're just gonna anyway. But yeah, compilations are fascinating, and I am very impressed with myself. Just to tell you, I think this group of three is a really interesting contrast. To have Bushido, Mello Music Group, released this year, to have, I think it was like 1998, Ride or Die.
1999. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And then to have the Anticon 2004 label sampler 99 to 2004 really shows you kind of the different tiers and levels that you're operating at. Me and KD talk about this a lot, bro. That like these different. If you're in the penthouse, you have to keep paying for the penthouse. Your goals are different. Your missions are different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Selling a different thing. If you're, middle, if you're in the middle, you can take some chances. You can pay your bills here and play there. But if you're on that like low run underground, you're just doing whatever you want. And it's different kind of vibes unified by these missions. How was your listening experience with jumping between these albums?
So for me, Rough Rider, the Rough Riders Ride or Die. Like for both of these, I've heard them, but I can't really even tell you when the last time I heard them because, like I said, I'm not a compilation guy. So I overall like definitely really enjoyed being transported into two kind of like wildly different environments. And I thought the Rough Riders one was pretty interesting because I don't know. It's just something. I have something weird with those Swizz beats, like Casio beats.
Yeah.
Like when I think of the Volume 2 Volume 2 Jay-Z album that had a ton of those beats, and that was one of like the biggest showcases for Swizz. On one hand, I kind of just like think it comes off very tinny, played out, but then there's this part of me that just likes how cheap and rudimentary it almost feels. Like it feels so stupid, but in a way I love it. So I wouldn't say it aged like fine wine, but it aged just fine. But I think it like is kind of uneven, and I definitely think the singing parts, especially that one track that's all singing, and just
parlay.
Man,
Parlay?
I think so. Is it like towards the middle or like earlier?
Yeah, it's like it's the artist is Parlay.
Yeah, it reminds me of those hooks back in that time that I just don't like. Like I don't know, I wasn't, and I also wasn't like young. I was like not even existent at that time practically. So like I don't know, I just don't connect with that kind of super like very like singing with a lot of gusto. Like it tends to like not be it tends to be pretty hit or miss for me. But I really liked, like they had some really good moments. And I think overall it kind of, it accomplished that goal of ushering in this like hard hitting, yet still definitely commercial alternative to like the Bad Boy Rockefeller, but has like an unhinged, bombastic flavor that Swizz's production obviously punctuates a lot. And I think it definitely like gets the point across that this is something new, something fresh, and important in retrospect for sure.
Yeah, K Diggy, I think it's just called I'm a Rough Rider.
Yeah, that's the track. That's the
super
track.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
I loved it because when I heard this, I mean, Swizz Beatz production is so unique. Like as soon as I put it on, I was like transported back to 1999. I remember like I was in Chicago visiting my family for the summer of '99, and I remember the song. What is it? Not what you want. That was like a huge.
Dude.
That was a huge song, and I remember like I couldn't go a day. Like I was in Chicago for 2 weeks or whatever, and I couldn't go a day without hearing that song. And I loved it. So this, listening to it for the show tonight really kind of brought me back to that time. Yeah. So I mean, it really, for me, I think it basically to me, the Rough Riders Ride or Die Volume 1, it was basically a showcase for Swizz Beatz. And so, I mean, I think he had like songs that were too hot to not be heard. So whoever is the CEO of Rough Rider was like, look, we'll just make a compilation album with all your leftover beats, call it Ride or Die, and we'll see how it does on the charts. And it went #1. So
Funny enough, my favorite track is the one he didn't produce. It's the intro. The intro is crazy. The intro is amazing. I love that. I love that beat. I see it's DJ Clue. Yeah, and Duro. Yeah, I totally fuck with that. But I mean, his beats I like too, for sure, for the reasons I already mentioned.
Yeah, no, it was a fascinating listen. We could talk about the Rough Riders compilation and just start with that, since with the passing of DMX, people are remembering the Rough Riders run fondly, and his run and his talents. I was struck listening to this that I was like, oh shit, this was East Coast Cash Money.
It is. That's a good comparison.
Yeah.
Like the beats come off the conveyor belt. You can just crank them out, right? Like I re-listened to Jigga What Jigga Who, and I'm like struck by. I did the Roots Roundtable, and Zilla Rocca was there, and he was talking about how the song off Blueprint, the one there where he's running for president there. What was the
H to the Izzo?
Where he's like, that beat is so simple, my son can make it. It's just a super simple beat.
Oh, that's fire song though.
Absolutely.
But he was saying, He's like, I think the Roots look down on that kind of stuff. It's simple, but it's a hit, you know? And these are simple hits, right? If you listen to Jiggawa Jiggahoo and you just tune out the wordplay, it is the simplest, grooviest shit. And I think that's kind of the key there. I think Ride or Die Volume 1 is selling a style.
Yeah.
Selling a style. And we used to always make fun of the Rough Riders skits. They always had way too many skits. Love with their skits. But listening to the skits, and I'm like, no, this is kind of important. Like for them to explain what they are. Like to the audience. Buff Rider goes right in to do that shit. You know? And it just kind of sets a mood, a specific mood.
Yeah, I think the skits are so key. Like think about Griselda without all the 150 all those like Godfather, all those kind of mafioso things. Obviously they're not the first ones, but I can't think of look at those movies again without thinking of Griselda. It just adds to the ambiance and all that. And I would say also, I think to your point about selling a style, I think that's definitely very spot on. So like theme, when I say like theme is a possibility, theme, I guess style is kind of the same way because they all had the energy. Even Eve, I was reminded of how much I always liked Eve though. Can't say I really like don't dive into her music all the time, but Eve was a killer.
Yeah, and this was her coming out. This was like her coming out party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was so far ahead of her time. Like she was so far ahead of her time. I was remembering like Little Kim beefed with her just because she dressed like a normal person. Do you remember that? Little Kim was like, "You look raggedy," and would be like, "I don't know. She's got a denim jacket and denim pants. I don't know. Is it you not see people in denim?"
Yeah.
I mean, it was weird, but she could spit, and she was she sounded so confident, and she was her own thing. I just appreciated that, and she wasn't. I don't know. There wasn't any of that weird interplay. Sometimes Young Money does too much of that nonsense with Nicki, doing tracks about like whether or not they've had relations or whatever. It's just like it takes away from her strengths as an MC. And
I mean, she was treated like an equal. That's what I love about Eve. I mean, Eve was treated like an equal on this album.
Yeah.
Yeah. They back up for her. They let her rock out. This is also like a real. This is the Locks loaded up and ready to go. They are ready. Yeah. So it was shout out to Jadakiss, who really fell in love with his name being Kiss and all the wordplay he could do off of the Kiss.
Oh god.
Noises. Kiss of Death. He went hard on that for years. So I think did he stop that in 07? I think he may have finally stopped that in 07. Good for him. But no, but it's a compilation that is trying to sell that R logo, this R lifestyle. And we're all like, this is the real shit. This is the but like we were just being sold a brand that was the counter to Diddy's brand.
Yeah. And you got
rugged, you know.
Sorry, there was Bad Boy at the time, and I'm thinking 99, I'm remembering Bling Bling was a huge hit back then as well. So you had that whole movement that was kind of bubbling, or that, Cash Money was kind of bubbling as well. Juvenile was on.
Yeah. Wayne was already. Yeah.
So, there was just a lot of labels trying to stake their claim, stake their territory and, make their name known.
Money was to be made at that point. That's when the industry was starting to get popping, and all the label heads knew, like, holy shit, we can make bank. And so I find Rough Riders were like the perfect. They were like for people that didn't thought that other stuff was a little too glitzy, but it still way more commercial than like an actual underground alternative. So they're like, I still want to listen to like some stuff on the radio, but it's still gritty. Like, I mean, fucking DMX, like
Right.
Jadakiss Styles, like these guys like sound great over like a boom bap dusty beat if they wanted to. So it was a great alternative, but still was a moneymaker.
So much energy, like
Yeah.
in that compilation. It's stupid energy. I mean, when Down Bottom starts, the second song, I'm just like, this is a Southern song. Like this is a Southern. And then Juvenile starts, and I'm like, thank you. You know.
And what I loved, like when I contrasted these two, like this compilation to the other two, what I liked about this one is that there was a little bit of, I mean, because it was basically a Swiss Beats showcase. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of outside DNA from other labels. Like, I mean, like you look at the track listing and who are the guest performers on here. Ooh, let me get it back. Let's see, they had Styles P, Jadakiss. I mean, I think they were on Rough Rider, but Chic Lock,
part of the Rough
Juvenile, Jay-Z, Beanie Siegel, Jermaine Dupri, Mace, Big Pun. So, I mean, that's just when you're able to like have your label, but also like bring in some outsiders as well, that kind of spices things up a little bit.
I had forgotten how much I didn't like Mace's flow. Like he started rapping again. I'm like, oh no, he sounds like he's reading off a paper.
Yeah, he's inspired. It's funny. Like Mace is a guy that a lot of like current artists like say there's a big inspiration. I know Kanye's one obvious, but I think even Pusha T said that. Although I don't see the similarity, I just guess he liked him. So I don't hate him or anything, but I never saw what was so special about Mace.
No, the idea of Mace is much better than Mace.
Yeah, I think that's what it.
I think that's it. Yeah, I mean, but but yeah, they're not doing heavy lifting subject matter wise, right? We're shirtless on motorbikes, we're having a good time, but we're not like, dissecting the world or getting to the truth of anything. But that's what this is. It is a brand, it is a style, and I'm glad you brought up DMX. The thing about DMX that I'm listening to and hearing now that I never heard then. Like, really, we were like kind of fascinated by how much he swore and got away with it. And how insane he was, and how like the switch between his moods and all that stuff, right? The stories, the TMZ aspect. Mm-hmm. Listening to him now, like everything he says sounds perfectly sung.
Yeah.
The melodic nature of his delivery is hypnotizing to me.
Yeah. It's like haunting.
And I think that's why he could never successfully go underground.
Yeah, there's too much pop appeal.
There's too much pop appeal in his DNA, in his musical DNA.
Even when he's like rapping a verse where it's like he goes from like even when I do and like that part, like, oh, that's catchy, and you're just starting to head bob, even though he's saying like, and he has a bunch of what, like all that crap in it, like it sounds just infectious, even without trying, which is amazing.
No, he could sing. That's what struck me.
That's what I think the last song is called Some X Shit. Yep. I was surprised by the flow. He had a flow on there that was kind of like a call and a response type of flow, but like he was rapping hard and then he would respond like melodically in like a melodic tone. And I mean, it was very like, I mean, I'd never noticed it before I started paying like I was really paying attention to it. But you're right, there is a lot of melody to his flow.
A lot.
And you could see how he's influenced. Like you've seen like in today's times, you can't really rap you can't be a mainstream rapper without having some type of melody in your flow. So
Mhm.
you kind of can tie that to DMX in a lot of ways.
Well, and how interesting is it that some of these rappers who have like heavy New York rappers who have heavy melody in their flow, they're completely free of any argument about how they oversing or like they're always relying on that. Like no one ever said that about 50 Cent, even though he was heavy melodic.
Yeah.
No one ever said that about DMX. Uh, and it's interesting. This is interesting. We like kind of, we get at other people for having that, but we liked it. We like it sometimes.
I feel like when it's your defining trait is when people start to pay more attention and then get more critical, because you're right about that, but also obviously all of the gruff delivery, the ad libs and stuff like that, people would think about DMX, the swearing, like you said, just like the brash nature. So like that could be why he got away with it, because like, yeah, you're right. And also there's people like these days that I think are really influenced by him that I didn't previously realize. Like Freddie Gibbs feels like a smoother version of DMX. Like he's way less staccato and all that, but Freddie does a very similar thing where I also felt, because I listened to him maybe 2008 when I first heard Freddie Gibbs, and that's 5 years before he had that Pinata album. So I was always thinking, I'm like, man, this guy's gotta get popping in one day. He's just too catchy. There's just too much rhythm. There's too much melody. There's too much energy in this to not work. And obviously it did work.
Yeah. And I think when he signed to Jeezy's label, like you could see the hooks change, and really the hooks went to another level. And then, he weaponized that. But it's a great comparison with Gibbs and him. I think that generation, right? My generation, I don't know why I'm calling them that generation, they had a thing like I tell my wife, I don't like honey. I don't like honey. She starts naming all the shit she makes me that has honey in it. And I'm like, yeah, a little honey. I don't have to look at it. Just a little bit. Mix it in the. That's fine. Tell me about it. Keep it under wraps. That's kind of how we wanted our melody. We wanted, like you're shirtless on a motorbike and you're swearing, and that's what I'm going to focus on. I'm not going to think about how catchy this is. I think that was how we were. A lot of us.
Yeah, you can look at Pac too. Like, there's just that's. I always usually make the reference for Freddie is always Pac to me, but you're right when you're saying DMX, I see that too. But Pac, like, man, I never heard anybody when I first got into hip hop when I was younger said, "Oh yeah, Tupac's got such a good like singing voice. He's such melody." No one ever even thought to say that.
No, but I certainly, like in the army, I remember like sitting around with poker games and putting on Tupac, and everyone is singing it, like singing it as we're playing poker, but like not really registering that we're singing. I think you're absolutely right. It's weird, but it's interesting. I think in terms of general goals, I had two things that stuck with me. One of them, K Diggy's already put on the table here. It's all about production. It's all about you showing what kind of production your label has. Right? Here's our sound. And the other thing is, it's got to be too long. Has to be too long.
This one's under an hour, right? I think it is. And even then, it felt too long.
So you remember Stro Elliott was on the Super Duty Tough Work podcast. Great dude, smart stuff. He said, what you want to do when you set up your website, he's a big set up your website guy. And he says, when you're an artist, you set up your website, make sure to have everything you ever did in a music section. Because you want to wow them with how much you've done. You want them to scroll down and be like, wow.
Wow, there's a lot of work here. Yeah.
This, because if I'm an album guy and I fall in love with this stuff, now I'm gonna dive. I'm gonna just dive into this world and start collecting, right? Um, and that's kind of what a compilation's trying to do.
And also, you have to think that is exactly correct. Plus, we're in '99 when people are buying CDs, so having a longer album was not the same. Oh, I'm taking too much time out of my day. They're like, oh my god, that's sweet. I paid $12 and now I have so much music. Versus if this was a 30-minute project. So that was also I don't know if I didn't live at that time. I don't know if it was encouraged, but it was definitely accepted 100%.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the ways that people listen to music as well, like when I was in Chicago, you know, I remember people bumping it in the car. You know, I remember walking the street and people, like, we'd have boom boxes back then, and people would have the CD running from the boom box. You know what I mean? So it's and now I feel like nowadays people listen to music more when they're, you know, either like going for a jog or in the gym, or they're working from home.
Mm-hmm.
I want to jog with a boombox. That would be awesome.
It's probably a good exercise.
Yeah.
But the other thing to add on to this point, because you make great points, is we didn't have the developed media industry that we have now, right? So you put out a compilation album, and now you've got buyers who bought that album who are saying, "Who's the guy on track 12?" Right?
Mm.
I know this guy, and I knew this guy, and they delivered, but also this guy on track 12. I really want to buy his stuff. So you create your own, you know, promo, in a sense, that you didn't have back then, where you couldn't just like send the artist to this blog or this whatever. Yeah.
I mean, this, as I said, this was the album that launched Eve.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, you didn't have to do like a big tour to tell everybody she was cool. You just played that song and people were like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it was weird because it felt like rap crews at that time were kind of looking for a girl to add to the crew.
Yeah.
Yep.
It didn't always work out. Fit wise, it just didn't work out. Right people, right place, you know. But the fit between Eve and the Rough Riders is perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, it represents that kind of like when you're at the top, and they're at the top because Swizz like gets discovered. Like Jay-Z's, like Volume 2 is kind of mostly Swizz, right?
Yeah.
And so, and that album charts way high. You know, that is the biggest.
That was number one.
And so his name is buzzing like crazy. And he does kind of exactly what you should do at that point, right? Like he takes the people he has, puts them all in one place and goes, "You like that?" Boom. He gets Jigga What Jigga Who from Jay, puts it in the middle, and goes, "Now buy into my experience." And it launches this attack.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fantastic. It's why like Mike Will Made It snatched up those two goons and made Race Remond. Like
yeah.
Because you want to control your own success at some point.
Yeah,
so,
Swizz's moves have been underrated.
Yep.
Swizz's moves have been underrated. I mean, the dude literally no other proof required than he has rapped on however many verses he's rapped in his life, that amount of verses too many than he should have. Yet somehow he always gets allowed to rap a verse, and it's always usually trash.
Oh yeah.
But he's just allowed to because people like him. He's definitely good when it comes to the relationship A&R side, and his beats are still good. He still makes good beats now. He just doesn't produce as the same prolific rate, but he can still produce his ass off.
It's kind of like a spot up shooter who can play for 20 years as long as he can hit the shot. You know, he's still just making these bangers, and like the move. One of the moves these devilishly clever moves that he makes, he opened a studio where people could record. And guess what? Snoop is stopping by. All these people are stopping by to record their albums, and Swizz is in the building, and he's like, "Let me throw you a beat."
That's smart.
He's on everybody's shit.
Yeah. I mean, you think about you could argue that the reason they got most of the guest artists that they got on this album was because of Swizz.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%. 100%.
So, I mean, as I said, I've listened to it, listened to this album in 2021. This was a Swizz showcase for me.
It was surprisingly fun, and there's just a lot of good minds behind this album. I loved mixing up the playlist with the Anticon one.
I didn't try doing that. I definitely didn't try doing that.
Oh, it was so good. I would do like 2 Anticon songs and then be like, bang, give me a Rough Riders song. Because, I mean, that Anticon was 32 songs. It's not short. But it is, it kind of made me, it made me a little emotional. I mean, this is kind of the sound of Maine, a lot of these guys are from Maine. Soul, Alias, DJ Mayonnaise, who's on that label, who retweeted that we were doing this. These are all people from like Maine, New England area, St. Francis from Rhode Island. And they started this thing, and it was boldly different.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to it now, and I'd be interested in how you heard it, K Diggy, but it sounded like a bunch of kids who were like, no, I think rap music can do what alternative music does. And basically set out to do it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it ties into what you were saying at the start of the show about, the different level of expectation, depending on where you're at in the, I guess, music hierarchy, hip hop hierarchy. And for me, like, it just sounded like it was a bunch of kids, just having a good time and just making music, and wanted to show the world what they could do collectively as a group. And they weren't like it. It didn't sound like they were trying too hard, or they were trying to make like a masterpiece compilation album. It just sounded like they just wanted to show the world what they could do as a label.
I was floored by the production at hand, by how good the production sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it sounds beautiful for a lot of the points. And that was one of my biggest takeaways, definitely in contrast, especially with the Rough Riders, as we just talked about. That was basically a big objective, was a Swizz Beatz showcase. Yet I find the producer is given so much more time to breathe. There's at least a couple instrumental tracks here, if not a lot of songs where it's like instrumental music for like 2 minutes of the track. And I found that was particularly interesting because, in addition to what K Diggy was saying there, I think another key objective that this album had was to, I'm trying to figure out a way to how to describe it, but it's this sound that has like warm ambient elements to it, but very lo-fi still. Like the drums are often like very lo-fi. And you made a very good point, Dan, about like hip hop's answer to alternative music, because I actually had this thought independently as I was listening to this album. I was also listening to one of Odd Nosdam's album, Burner, and the same thing applies because that type of singing is here too, where it felt like dream pop.
Yes.
The way of singing, the tone, the vocal kind of effects they had, just the tone of it, the timbre, and then mixed with that kind of like ambient, really in your face, kind of like it collides with the voice to where the voice isn't trying to be too separate. It's very like mixed in with the beat. It gave me so much dream pop vibes, and I thought that was super interesting to hear. I never noticed it when I listened to this music like way back when, and I loved it for the most part.
I mean, yeah, no, there's a bunch of emotional reactions listening to this album, but like you're right. Darla is the example I would give on that. That Y song, Darla, which is like about a pet in a cage.
Track 29. Yeah.
It's so weird, but it's so like alternative. Like it's sung kind of in a very alternative way. My other takeaway from this was just deeply missing Alias, Brandon Whitney. He, I don't know. I don't know how familiar you are with Alias, Ro.
Not incredibly familiar. No, I know like good amount of music though, but yeah.
Basically the best. He's basically the biggest talent that Maine's ever produced in terms of hip hop. He's an incredible producer. Was known as an incredible producer, like great pitchfork marks, all that shit. He was, but he could rap too. I saw him live, and I was just like, wow. He was rapping, and he was killing it. And he kind of just, I don't know, he kind of stopped rapping and focused on the producing. So, like, the best rapper in Maine at any given time was whoever Alias liked and would give beats to. Because he was that good. So there's some Alias stuff on here that floors me. I mean, he passed away. So it's sad to have him gone, but Divine Disappointment is just a hell of a song.
Oh yeah.
Hell of a song. Wow. And you know, the Deep Puddle Dynamics stuff was wild with Slug and all these people in the mix. Dose One. What was that? K Diggy, the one when you were talking about them just having fun. Do you remember that that sample of them on stage talking to the crowd? It was like live at a venue, and he was like,
wait, yeah.
You remember back when soul was body rocking? And they cut to Dose One, and they were like, you know, Dose One was, you know, coming from the chamber, and then he's like, coming from the chamber, and he does a big voice. They're just having a ball, you know, they're just enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the expectation was they wanted to have fun, but they wanted it. It almost served as like a mission statement for what their label Anticon, what it stood for.
Yep.
So like I've never heard, this is the only piece of work that I've heard from any artist on Anticon. And just hearing this, like I know what they stood for. I know what the label stood for, what they were trying to communicate, you know, what they were trying to, you know, transmit out into the world.
Yeah. No, it's like I you know, it's breathtaking. It was breathtaking for me, right? It was just a lot there because as jarring as some of the sounds were, as weirdo as some of the songs got, there's some really pretty sounds on it. What was that? Think of the Pity Party People interlude.
Oh, that one was so nice.
It's so pretty. Like I think it's 19 seconds. It's just beautiful. And it comes after the excessively strange "It's Them" by themselves. It's perfect. It just they're just throwing you in all these different directions. And you don't care, and it's a great brand.
It's a great brand, and I think you said they're throwing each other I mean, throwing us in a variety of different directions. I find that aspect of this compilation is very similar to Bushido in that it is definitely showing off. One of the key aspects is showing off the diversity. It's like, look at our label. There's a look at all these different artists and sounds and vibes we can give you. But I found it flowed really nicely in both cases because I think, to K Dickey's point, they all exist in the same creative world. They all seem to abide by that mission statement. So I never even really caught myself noticing the transition. I'm like, oh, this is a really different song from that other one, because it kind of just made sense. It flowed, even though the songs could be quite jarring in difference a lot of times.
And one thing I noticed too is also, the compilation, the name of the album is Anticon Label Sampler 1999 to 2004. And the compilation was released in 2004. So it almost serves as a look back. They're not creating for the future. It's almost as they're looking back at the last 5 years of the label and giving you what they think truly embodies the last 5 years of, not only the label, but their lives as artists in general.
That's great.
And I think that's a key distinction between this and the other two compilations. The other two are looking forward. They're like like a bookmark, like, okay, this is where we're at in 2021 and 1999. But this was more like the Anticon compilation album was more of, this is what we did for the last 5 years. This is where we were at.
Mm-hmm. Right. See all this? We've already accomplished it, and you should catch up, Mm-hmm. It's a good deal, and it was, it's interesting. So it's good that it's long because it's dizzying, right?
It's hypnotic.
You don't necessarily need to hear every track, but if you hear enough, you'll pick sections apart or follow artists and listen to those artist tracks, and you'll grow from there.
Yeah, and I think it also, especially in hindsight, I can't speak to how big they were at the time of 2004, but in hindsight, seeing names like Odd Nosdam and themselves, some of the bigger artists that came out of that label, obviously, how timeless the sound is. I can't even still to this day, I'm trying to think of a reference point of like, oh, that artist like does a similar thing. And now when it comes to the sound, the production, I still don't know of a producer that has that Odd Nosdam weird tape hiss. Like I can't describe it. It's so warm and like warped. There's those field recordings. I don't know if any artist has even tried to do that.
No, I hear you. Well, and that's the crazy thing is like we're like we've looked back and everybody celebrated Def Jux, right, and how experimental their sound signature was. But Anticon kind of gets left out of that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And they were crazy experimental. They didn't have the talent on the roster.
Yeah, that's the main reason.
Def Jux had. But in terms of production, they were super ahead of the game. And interesting. Innovative. I remember there was a podcast, Call It Culture podcast, where Curly Castro was talking about how, don't sleep on Maine. They do some innovative, weird stuff out there. Mm-hmm. And that reputation is built on these guys, built on Anticon. Mm-hmm. Just a really interesting label. And I hope that they are kind of rediscovered and put to the forefront in an interesting way. Mm-hmm. Someone or by some generation.
I don't know if you guys still do those recommendations at the end, so I'm just gonna say this one now, and then I'll try to think of one later. But Burner, Odd Nosdam. I don't know. Is that how you? By the way, I never knew how to say his name. Is it Odd Nosdam? Odd Nosdam? Nosdam sounds better, but I don't know.
We all said Odd Nosdam. We all
Nosdam. Okay, cool. Yep. So Odd Nosdam Burner. I think came out in 2006. That album is unbelievable. I was listening to it while I was on a walk, sunny. Just was exactly what I needed. It's kind of like oddly sad in a lot of ways, and I actually had a little back and forth with him on Twitter.
Yep.
And it really was illuminating. Some of like the gunshots. I had a whole thing about how I thought this song sounded like. He's like, yeah, it was field recordings of like some Asian gang was like had a crazy violent interaction with these people right outside his house, and he recorded it, and that's on Untitled too. And I'm like,
Woo!
okay, that adds to it. But Odd Nosdam Burner, that's a classic.
And that's how effective this compilation was, right? That you were like, I'm reaching back on these guys because they were unique and interesting and fully formed in a lot of ways, right? They didn't interlock and depend on one another for successful songs, right?
Mm-hmm.
They could kind of all make their own stuff or make collective stuff, and it was fine either way. Soul still making albums. A lot of these guys are still rocking.
Yeah, a lot of them are.
Yeah. So, but yeah, pivoting to Bushido. I have to say, I think I might like the narratives around Bushido even more than Bushido.
Interesting. What do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Start with the first, right? The most important narrative that comes out of Bushido for me as a hip hop fan is, and this is just me cooking up weird, wild conspiracy theories with no information. Alchemist does Haram, which is a huge step.
Mm-hmm.
Huge step. And then he does this song with Kelly Chris. And he's tweeting about Curly Castro and how great he is. And my head is spinning, and I'm thinking, what if Alchemist is kind of bored with the pop guys?
I think he's been telling us that for years now. Like, think about his past work. We got Freddie Gibbs is the closest.
Yeah. From Action to Freddie, he's just kind of like moved on. And if he's peeled off the top of a layer of like the next level guys, and like he can do full albums with these guys, that would be amazing.
I think that's a good point, because that was like one of the things I never really understood about The Alchemist, and it's something I don't understand in general, just as a non-artist. But sometimes it just seems so obvious what an artist probably could do to make, at least like just on not business side, just purely like what would make the best music. And I find the answer a lot of times for these big name producers that just get with like pop or like more mainstream acts that are just so average. It's like, just get with one of these underground cats. Your name is The Alchemist. People are going to flock to it anyway. And you'll just make a Alfredo, which is Freddie Gibbs is the most mainstream guy he's worked with in a long time. And he's still, at this point, maybe Freddie's actually mainstream, but I'd have a debate about that. He's still kind of like half, but
right.
Action was still relatively underground, but popular-ish. Boldy James, still pretty underground. Currency's kind of cult, but he's obviously established. And then Freddie again, and obviously now Haram. I wouldn't be surprised. I think that's a good kind of hint we're seeing. I think he wants to peel back the layer and go even more underground, because he saw with Haram how successful that was. People, like, if the quality's good, he's still going to get his respect, and I hope he's not in for it for the money at this point, because I'm sure he doesn't need it.
I mean, because I'll be honest, I think there's something cold-blooded about what Muggs does. I think like, they're both talented, obviously. Like, Muggs is a legend, one of my favorite producers ever, but there's something kind of cold-blooded and economic about what Muggs does. He kind of like, once you reach this level of visibility within the hardcore sphere, then I do an album with you.
Mm-hmm. It's like a rite of passage.
Yeah, whether it's Ego, whether it's Rome Streets, whether it's whoever. You reach this level, we do an album together. Thank you for your business. And he just kind of keeps running in the same circle. You know what I mean? He's looking at Crime Apple like, your number's up, we'll do it then, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I mean, so Alchemist wants to play and wants to get weird. And who better to do that with than, Kelly Chris or, Curly Castro or any number of these cats who were just like, sound amazing over that stuff.
And he has that. He's involved. I don't know if you guys saw it on social media. April 30th, there's some album, we don't know what it is, that's coming. That had the same photo was tweeted by a number of artists, including The Alchemist. And we're talking about Earl is the one I'm hoping it's his project. We know the relationship, but past that, we're talking about people that are definitely not to the level of an Action Bronson ever was, even definitely not a Freddie Gibbs. Pink Saifu, Boldy James, obviously, Navy Blue, Mavi, people that make sense, but again, he doesn't need to be making music. He's definitely above them in stature. And I love that he's doing something with them.
Love it.
And I'm expecting him to continue. At this point, you're making a good point. It reminds me of kind of like that later day, what we talked about with Pharoah Monch. I forget the term I used, where you reach a certain level where it's a passion project phase.
Yep.
Alchemist doesn't need to be chasing recognition, legacy.
He's not worried about his legacy.
And definitely not money. So it's like, I just want to do what I'm passionate about. And I think he's just really energized by these underground cats these days.
Yeah. I mean, if you get too bored, right, feeding that economic model, you become less good at what you do.
Mm-hmm.
You have to put both feet in what you're doing, right? To do
it. And what I would say is, like, as your level gets higher, the expectations get higher as well. So if you're working with certain artists, there are certain expectations for, what your sound should sound like, or, the quality of the beat. Like, the higher you go, the less experimentation that you can do.
Right.
So if you're able to work with these bubbling rappers or artists, you're able to experiment more, and you're able to kind of stretch your wings a little bit more than you are with, someone like a Freddie Gibbs at this point.
Yeah.
And there's no rule saying he can't feed Eminem a beat if he wants to while he's producing Pink Sifu album. Like,
right.
Kind of do both if he wants, like, no problem. But because you're not losing the names out of your phone, like,
Right.
But he can put his energies in different places and have a ball. But so that song makes me excited, hoping for more Iron Steel Samurai. But the other narrative is this is a different Homeboy Sandman.
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
I feel like he's been different for years at this point.
I've listened to a lot of Homeboy Sandman, and I just think he was always like caught in between worlds, right? He wasn't the conscious rapper, right? He had a sense of humor. He had the sense of like telling you personal things, but personal things really weren't here or there.
Mm-hmm.
Like just kind of talking to you, very conversational. But because of that, none of his albums he never had the album where I could be like, you've got to hear this album, right? But Trauma was closer than I've ever seen him be to
that. That album, are you talking about the album or that song?
The album.
Yeah, the album. Yeah, Don't Feed the Monster. That one was the one that changed it for me. That's why I was like, I disagree with you just because I feel like, but only 2020, so it was like a year ago. Because that one was when I think he found his niche where, because he was caught between kind of being like almost like lazy stoner vibe, lackadaisical, and it was funny, he's charming because of how much he doesn't give a fuck, and that not giving a fuck led to a lot of emotional issues and just like avoidance issues, but he never really gave you enough to like latch onto. But then Don't Feed the Monster came, and then he just bared his soul and then rapped just incredibly well too, with Quelle Chris supplying the beats. And I love that album. Like, I absolutely love that. That was definitely my top 20, I think. And he's just continuing that.
That dropped the same week that Open Mike Eagles Anime Trauma and Divorce dropped.
Mm-hmm.
And people were bundling them in the discussion of that week. People were like, which album do you like better or whatever? And I think Open Mike Eagles is one of the best guys out, period. Like, but to have Homeboy Sandman in that conversation was somewhere he hadn't been in a while. And Burst Truly, I think, is one of his best songs ever.
I love that song.
Wow.
I love that song.
I was gonna
Everything
say
he does good.
I love None. I feel like None was my favorite track on the album.
It's definitely like top 2 for me.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So wow.
Yeah.
But I mean, he did. I think, like you said, Dan. I think he found his level of sincerity. There was just a warmth to it that was like very endearing. This is like None is my favorite. None track 10 is my favorite, probably my favorite track of 2021. Yeah. And for me, it's just the level of warmth, the level of like, I feel like I really got to know him in a way that is a lot more relatable than Trauma, than I got to know him on Trauma.
Don't Feed the Monster. Yeah, I mean, it was.
Or Don't Feed the Monster. Yes.
Yeah.
So,
So I mean, and I think, you know, when you were talking about how good he is on this album in the review, and I think it's hit a point. And I don't know if it was working with Kelly Chris, having the freedom to do what he wanted, but there's a point where like whenever he starts rapping on Bushido, I'm like, everybody be quiet.
Mhm.
Everybody shh. Everybody shh. I've got to hear this. Because it's easy introspection.
It's like he's not even trying.
yes.
It's just like, I'm just gonna have a day. I just am a person that is always open, and you're like, oh yeah, genuine. And the thing I think he does that I think I may have said, I don't, not on this show, but in my show, I guess, that the way he says it too is so important, because you obviously are allowed to, and I find it just as genuine potentially if you're very like poetic and coded with your introspection. But the way he says it, it's clever wordplay, but the words he's saying are so plain and simple that you just can't avoid it. Like Trauma, the track Trauma, that was like the first time I'd heard a Homeboy Sandman song and like loved. I was like, it took me so many plays to realize what he was saying, because I just was not ready to take it in, this story he was telling. That's just, he just caught that, and it's never leaving him now, hopefully, at least.
Yeah, it's it's like when a player just unlocks a new level 7 years in, and it's like, holy smokes, that's how it feels. And I can't wait to hear his next album.
I can't either. Yeah, he's found the right balance. I think like some players, when they come in the league, they're trying to do like they fluctuate from extremes. And then eventually, there's some players that get to a point where they recognize the right amount of both extremes and find that middle pathway.
Yep.
And the game just becomes easy to them because they know how to do everything. They know like the right amount of the extreme to put in their game, and they just found that middle path, and they just go down there and they just dominate the game effortlessly. So I mean, like I think of like a guy like James Harden, if we're thinking of players. And I think Homeboy Sam, I think like his work on this album is him finding that middle path.
Yeah. So the game is definitely coming easy to him. What do you think? What other narratives do you think come out of Bushido?
I think the biggest narrative I got from them is that I didn't really realize, or I didn't quantify necessarily, just how soulful and organic their sound is. I didn't realize that all of them together have that. Even the people who maybe you don't initially kind of equate him to it, but like a Sky Zoo, I didn't realize that his sound is so fitting with these artists. Even though he can rap on a more dirty, gritty track. He always tends to have some nice jazz, some nice soul, and then himself, he's such like a good guy That's
Right.
just how he raps. You just know
Yep.
he's a good guy. So that wholesome, organic, soulful feeling was just all over this album. Even on tracks that are like nothing like the other, that was like the connecting tissue.
Yeah, and it made that like it's that's their motto, right? Sounds beautiful like the truth. And I think that it makes it a more coherent listen because it's all very soulful.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes, you know, Kelly Chris stand out, right, on Bane Brain because it's just so different.
Oh, that was such a good track.
100%.
Well, and that's Kelly Chris doesn't really need a verse to steal the show. That's the thing. If you give him the hook, he's already, stolen the song. He's full swag.
And for me, like I thought what Bushido did was, and I don't know if this metaphor will make sense, but I think if you understand the philosophy of the hive, and I'm by hive I mean like a beehive, then you can appreciate and understand the individual bee more. So for me, like if you can understand the philosophy of the Mello group, and you can understand what they stand for, then in the future, when one of their artists release an album or a project, we have an understanding of where they're coming from, and it helps us appreciate them even more.
Yep.
So that kind of ties into why the album is named Bushido, or the compilation named Bushido. So I think they do a good job of establishing what their label stands for, and providing a context for the listener to understand, like a Homeboy Sandman or an Open Mike Eagle, because we understand and we know where they're coming from.
And understanding what they stand for, one of the things that they stand for, and it is very slick, they're very well run, is they first they put their foot in the door, bringing in kind of people who had been pop people, but were old now and had kind of fallen off the radar, right? Popular, important rappers like OC did an album with Apollo Brown.
Yeah.
Did an album with La Orange, right? All of a sudden, Joel Ortiz falls from grace. He's on Mello Music. Stolly falls from grace on Maybach. He's on Mello Music. So they're good at bringing those kind of giving those guys a second chance, right? But they didn't want to be a retirement home. So they bring young new cats all the time. Namir Blade, Solemn Brigham. They bring young cats in, and then in this compilation, one of the things they really dig, they mix them up.
Yeah,
they mix them up. Black Rock, right? Joel Ortiz, Namir Blade, Stolly, and Solemn Brigham.
That was heat.
That shouldn't work. It shouldn't work, but it does.
Does. Open Mike Eagle, Namir Blade, Eloquent, Symbol of Hope. I mean, they're doing this all throughout of just like taking the kid and the vet and putting them together. I loved Outlast. I loved hearing Dueling Experts with Joel Ortiz. I thought that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, to go back to the sports metaphor, there's some teams where the culture is so strong, they're willing to take chances on veterans because they know, like, once they get in here, they'll figure it out. We'll give them a direction, we'll give them a role, and they'll figure out how to use their talents best.
They're like the Patriots.
Yeah.
Legit. Like
the Spurs, I think of the Spurs are another team like that.
Yep.
I mean, they've renewed Rudy Gay's career, made that man millions.
Yep. I mean, and there's people I don't even listen to a lot. Like, I don't listen to a lot of RJ Payne. I think, David Ma accurately kind of puts, like, I don't need people yelling at me. From a texture standpoint, I work hard. I work hard all day. You know, I'm raising a kid. I don't need you yelling at me. I didn't do anything wrong. Anyway, but RJ Payne comes on here on Black Man and kills it. Amazing. Murs comes on, Turnt Garveyite, and really smart song where he is pulling quotes.
Oh, that was
Yeah,
amazing.
that was such a strange song.
Bars after it that connect to the next quote.
Oh, I love that song.
Murs has been rapping so long that you get the vibe like he's like bored with doing it conventionally.
I thought this is one of his like YouTube videos, like, cause I'm forgetting the publication that he's worked for many, like he's so big into that.
Right.
And for the longest time, I didn't know they were the same person. Like he's been big on like that, I don't know what you call it, music discussion stuff for a while, but I was independently getting to Murs like 5-10 years ago. I was like, oh, this guy's called Murs. That's funny. Yo, it's like the rapper. And I didn't notice because I never knew what these guys look like. I don't watch these music videos. And I felt like I was listening to one of his videos. Like he had like the quote coming up and making like some cool point about music because he's so smart.
Yeah.
I fuck with that. I think this compilation showed just how fundamentally sound they are. There's only one song I really didn't like. The others, every single artist had something that they brought to the table that was really good. And I think it all gets brought together just because their production and the sound is like, if you have Apollo Brown, Odyssey, Quelle Chris, Eloquent, and other guys like that, just making the sound for this, like it's going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I'm about to say is patently sacrilegious, and both of you should distance yourself from it. But I find Odyssey's rapping a little bland.
Now or just in general?
Over the years, me and a friend of mine have debated whether or not we actually like Odyssey. And I don't think either of us know. I text from him where he's like, I quit this Odyssey thing. Because like the production is so good. He's a very good producer. He's good at rapping, I suppose, but I don't remember anything he's ever said.
I think Odyssey is someone that he is very good. I think he's good technically at rapping at this point. I think that goes without saying.
Yes.
I think he sometimes lacks like a real personality or some quirk or some it factor to his verses that I think kind of leads itself to not be as memorable. I think if anything lyrically though, like he still does it for me because I love his subject matter. And that's why I agree with you that I found Odyssey, while I did like the songs, I really liked how groovy they were pretty much.
Yep.
The verses though, it reminds me about why he's not someone that I would say is a good feature or a good one-off verse. Like when you take the context or a whole narrative of an album, like The Good Fight, I love that album because that whole, what it stood for is very like Mello music group. Just so wholesome, so much grown man rap, so much just like doing it your own way, independent, smart guy. But in those little pieces, yeah, he's a little underwhelming at times. And still good, but I don't feel the exact same. But he's still a little underwhelming.
Coming after yours truly to swing into like No Trouble was just you're like, he's unlocked it, but you have not. Like that was what it felt like to me. But to focus on the positive here, like I'm buying all the Solemn Brigham stock I can.
He killed it.
Every time I put Marlo on any song, my wife starts dancing. Like it's just what it is. His flow, his ability, his technique is great.
He's not someone that clicks really, at least for me. He didn't click very early. I heard Marlo 1 when it came out. As soon as it came out, heard it recommended from a couple people I know, and I was not unimpressed, but I was just so like, all right, next, like
Right. Yeah.
not too wowed by anything. And I fucked with Larange at that point already.
Oh yeah.
But Marlowe 2, about last year, I finally kept listening to it, and then it just unlocked. And then I realized this guy's got such a personality and an energy and a lyrical ability that's just so, he pops off the page like anytime he's on a track.
Marlowe 2 is an enormous step up from
Huge step
Marlowe.
up. Larange 2 killed, like his production went way out there, more than just the jazzy rap typical, and it worked.
Marlowe 1, I was like, kind of like, I don't know what you see in this guy, but I'll roll with you. And by Marlowe 2, I was like, holy shit, this is like a, you knew it, I didn't. And this is a thing. And I think it just continues here because whenever he's put near other people, he smashes it. You know, as we said, Black Rock, he smashes it. Yeah, he's just, yeah, the Marlowe song, the solo song is great. There's also, what's like, shout out to Kambata. I really liked that Nightmare song. That was fun.
Yeah, I think they did a great job. Now that you mentioned like the production, I think they did a great job with the sequencing of the album. You like the first half, you could tell was very, mid tempo, and then it kind of ratcheted up. Like from track 11 to 20, the energy's a little bit higher.
Yeah, I got more rapidy rap in the middle too.
Yeah. And so that helped me appreciate the way that they broke it down, helped me appreciate it. It helped me, like, not only help the flow, but helped me appreciate each song a little bit more than I would have.
And I think Dan, sorry, go. No, I was gonna say, Dan, I wanted to, before I forget, mention the fact that they're so well run.
Yo, yeah.
Look at all the art, like look at all the albums that are already set to release that just got announced. We're talking Sky Zoo has been like one of my highly anticipated ones. And his only verse, I think he only has one on this, was my favorite track, Ta-Nehisi, the music, or Ta-Nehisi.
The vocals.
Oh, just everything about that, from the beat to the verses, was perfect.
It's fabulous. Yeah.
They have that. They have Apollo Brown and Raheem Devon, which the one single is Crack, straight fire. Like, that is a beautiful track. And then Namir Blade, Larange, I already know that one is coming out in the next month or two. I don't know the exact date. And I'm sure there's going to be someone else, one of these bigger names. I won't be surprised if Odyssey's been not releasing much recently. He had that the Odd Cure, which was kind of like, seemed like a mixtape vibe. I wouldn't be surprised if we get an Odyssey project come out of this. They're so well run. They didn't release this just for money. They're ready to set something up.
Yeah, no, that's, I mean, that needs to be in the conversation, right? Because you're looking at the talent. It's kind of like baseball managers. The talent is putting the right like order out there, putting the right lineup, right? They put, I mean, what they have slated, right, on this, we'll watch it on the 16th, 2 days from now, as we record this. They're going to release Season of the Seven, which is Recognize Ali of Dueling Experts with Bronze Nazareth production. Bronze Nazareth is just a genius of like boom bap production. Then in like, I think May 7th, La Orange and Namir Blade.
Yeah.
And that corner store scandal is a crazy dope single. So the game for them is the lineups, right? And putting the right lineups out there. Producers with producers with rappers and everything else.
And producers that are flexible too. I mean, we're talking about that Raheem Devon's gonna be a soul album. Soul with like a hip hop twist, which I just love the sound of it. And then you have Larange, who can make that wild, eccentric stuff with Solemn Brigham. But then he's also a guy who's made, it's always in the weirder side, but he made that Jeremiah J, those couple albums that were actually phenomenal.
Love them.
They just have great plug and play kind of really versatile artists too, that they can match up with these new crop of people that they find. And it actually, I'm a prime example of how it worked, because Dueling Experts was someone I knew. As soon as they came out, I listened. I was not impressed for whatever reason.
Right.
Heard this verse, loved it, and then I bought Dueling Experts 1, and I'm trying to buy the second. It's so dope.
Right.
And now I want to check out that Recognize Ali. Like, I didn't,
Oh, that's gonna be great.
I did not even, I thought it was just kind of bland, rappy rap, but they actually really do have a nice style. It's really fun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, they know how to make rapping into songs. Like, that's, shout out to them. I think it's a really interesting thing, and they're built on like Apollo Brown and La Orange, right? Those are the kind of key elements right now, production wise.
Mm-hmm.
And Apollo Brown is a consistent dude. He knows what his sound is. He makes mid-tempo boom bap. That's what he wants to make. That's what he does make. He's brilliant at it. He'll always give you what you want. La Orange, he still does boom bap, but he kind of deconstructs and reconstructs it. So when Cool Keith came over, you were like, "Oh yeah, you go with La Orange, like that's perfect, right?" When OC comes in, he goes with Apollo Brown, right? So when they said Raheem Vaughn, and with that was just, I was like, that's perfect. That makes total sense. You give him stability, and he can fly on that.
Yeah.
And I find it interesting too is the main vocalists on the album, on the label, Open Mike Eagle, Quelle Chris,
Yep.
Odyssey, they actually don't collab with the producers much.
No.
Like Open Mike Eagle has no collabs, and I don't even really know about even like that much production credits from El Orange or Apollo Brown. I can't think of literally one. Same with Odyssey, I can't think of one.
Right.
And Quelle Chris, Alchemist, actually no, Alchemist. Then no, I don't have any. I have none, which is really interesting. I think they kind of know it's like having sports again, like 3 players that you don't need to put anything around them. They're just gonna take them, your team, and bring them to the playoffs and shit. So you don't have to worry about them. Let them do their thing. Use the producers as your supporting pieces, your chess pieces, to put around with all these other guys to bolster them, give them like a real proper sound.
Yeah. I mean, you look at Kelly Chris can produce it all himself if you want.
Yeah, and he's a producer. Yeah.
And Odyssey's the same way. So if those guys have their own stuff, and obviously Open Mike Eagle has crazy vision, and he's good to do whatever he wants to do. But yeah, no, they're incredibly well managed, and so the narratives that spawn out of Bushido are fabulous, and will probably be big buzzing throughout the year. And I hope they have a huge year. I hope they keep having huge years, so that they can kind of fortify the rest of the industry, right? Like Open Mike is not on Mello Music anymore. He releases through his own shit.
Yeah, that's true.
Because of how well he sold on Mello Music, he has his own podcast network. You know what I mean? So it's been good for everyone, right? So I want them to be a finishing college for artists, so they can get their stuff together and go out and do their thing.
Yeah, they're a really necessary force in the industry right now. Because
Absolutely.
I mean, the label is dying out in a lot of ways, especially in the independent scene. A lot of independents don't even have that kind of decision of, oh, should I even pursue this? It's almost always a no these days. But Mello Music Group is showing you a different way that they have for a decade now, which is that you can be part of a label. You could have that label backing, which they show the actual true benefits of a label still now, which is like A&R work, making connections, budgets, and just like reputation, respect, because people expect a certain quality level with Mello Music Group and a certain sound. And Namir Blade is someone I automatically was going to give a shot to just because he's on a Mellow Music Group. Like, I have no idea who the fuck he is. So that just tells you that. And I think they are super important, and I really want to continue supporting them because they're hugely important.
I mean, we've talked about in the past, Dan, how, like, you know, the old ideas of what a label are you know, they're archaic. The blueprint's archaic now.
Yeah.
So I think Mellow Music is the blueprint that we can use going forward in this new streaming and digital music era for how to develop artists. Because, you know, that's what I think that we mentioned that before. There's not a lot of artistic development in today's music climate. But if you look at Mellow Music's, like their blueprint and just their philosophy and generally just the way they go about things, that could serve as a model moving forward about how to develop artists in the you know, the streaming climate that we're in right now.
Yeah, no, that's, I mean, a great point. And in a funny way, it reminds me of comic books. Comic books right now are in a very interesting place because a popular writer will do a few years, right, on Batman. Scott Snyder did a few years on Batman, did really impress people, did his thing. And then he goes and he sells independent horror comics on the side.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the DC stuff, he's not going to be able to collect residual money on it, right? That's going to be owned by them. But those horror comics that now sell much better because people know him from Batman, that's his.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's not like cut and dry. Like the Walking Dead guy, Robert Kirkman, he'll like never do big comic books again because he wants to own it all, right? Dame Dash style. But Scott Snyder, people like that, they'll jump in, do some Batman stuff or do some superhero stuff, jump back, do some independent stuff. Why not? To have streams of income, to loosen it up, right? No phone plan, no contract, just stay here as long as you want, right? That's kind of Mellow Music, right? Stay here.
They're like an ecosystem.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If it's just one album, we'll win with that album. Like, don't worry about it. But if you win and you want to stay, hey, keep releasing albums with us. It's cool.
Yeah.
There's no stress. And so I think that is how labels are going to have to be.
And I think if you think about Top Dog Entertainment is something that's coming to mind as we're talking about this. Sure. I feel like they suffer from a problem where I actually look at the label as not a label. I look at it as like a giant group. And I think that's the problem. I mean, that's a problem I see because Mellow Music Group, to your point, they can just come and go. It seems very low stress. It seems like just win-win, mutually beneficial, no hard feelings. We understand we're a label and we're here to promote artists, make some money, and then you can go do your own thing, whatever. But Top Dog seems like all I can take from the outside, no insider information, obviously, is that just seems like there's odd drama and like over like very centralized control with the two guys and Punch and Top. And I feel like they're obviously suffering. We can say artist development. They were the model for artist development for a while, and then they're not.
Yeah.
2016, ever since there, where's SZA? Where's Isaiah Rashad? Where's J-Rock? Where's anybody? And like, that's why I think Mellow Music Group is so important, because Top Dog I thought was going to be that, and they're even more commercial. So I was like, this is the way to go. This is the model. But seems like shit's happened like a family where they're like going through just tension, and that's you don't hear any tension with Mellow Music Group.
No, it's a crew dynamic, right? TDE is a crew.
Yeah.
And it's a crew of people that have known each other for a long time, a lot of them. And then it's extended from that. And that made it awkward for people. But go ahead.
I was gonna say there's been a shift. I think what labels need to recognize, there's been a shift. The artists have the power now as opposed to labels. So with that power, there's going to have to be shifts in the way that you operate.
Right.
And I think what Mellow Music does is, what they've done well is, they established their sound and their philosophy. So, if a label, or I'm sorry, if an artist works with Mellow Music, they know what to go in, like they know what their sound is going to, they'll have a general idea of what their album will sound like.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, they can do that album and then they can go do another album that could sound completely different. And they have that freedom. I think with TDE, Top Dog, they're very strict about their quality control and what they want their artists' albums to sound like and what they think they should sound like. So that control can be good, and it can also be restrictive in some ways as well.
Yep. Exactly.
By the way, let me give you a weird regional take on Mellow Music, okay? Because I was reading stuff from a while ago. Like, I became fascinated with Mellow. They started in Arizona.
Yep.
They're not in LA.
Wow.
They're not in New York. They're in Arizona. So they built what they were doing on very practical bones. The guy talked about it. The guy who runs it said most big studios will have, they'll have a studio that's always open. And artists can just come in whenever they want, lay verses, smoke, hang out with friends. We don't do that. Our artists, like, they're like, work from home college students. They have their shit figured out. They come to the studio, they lay their shit, they leave. We pay for it, but like, they're not hanging out. And I think they built it on practical bones. So you see, the first artists that were embraced Mellow Music are people like Kelly Chris, Apollo Brown, Chris Orick, Odyssey. A lot of those people are from Detroit, Stick Figure from, Nebraska, like Midwest, forgotten places within the U.S.
Mm.
And it must have been appetizing to go, wow, these guys are successful and they're not in L.A.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
They're closer to me, and I live in the middle of nowhere. So that's cool. Like they were kind of an anti-established thing. They were born on practicality.
Mm-hmm.
They were not born out of a friendship between legendary artists. They were born out of practicality. So they've held that as their staple. Yeah, just looking at some of the older stuff, and Diamond District, that's DC. Just a lot of really good stuff from places in the U.S. that get forgotten about a little bit.
And you're bringing up a good point about the fact that almost all the modern labels that I think of, other than like the giant universal ones, you always associate it with like one artist or like two artists because they were directly responsible for all of the success. Rockefeller obviously is Jay, and then you could look at Kanye and like all those guys, Dame Dash. But Mellow Music Group doesn't have that. TDE has Kendrick. Brain Feeder Records, you were saying LA. I'm thinking that's pretty successful indie. Still Flying Lotus though. Still Flying Lotus is shit. Like Mellow Music Group doesn't have that one guy to where you may feel like overshadowed. You may feel like, oh, it's really their label, and then I get their scraps. Like that's what good music. We've heard that Kanye was terrible as an executive, not surprising, and people's kind of would just get scraps for their album rollouts, while one artist would just get this giant thing. Right. Didn't make any sense. Mellow Music Group, you're like, oh, I'm going to get a fair shake. It's going to be like a business. It's being well run. I'll get what I need. And that's all I'll get.
Yeah. No, it's I feel for you, Sci-Hi. Never gonna get that budget, man. It's brutal. Brutal. Writing all those things for him, and writing controversial lines that he blames you for whenever he gets called on. He's like, "Look, I didn't write my own verse. He did. I paid him for the verse and said it, but anyway, love him. He's such a great guy." So, transitioning into recommendation corner, I've organized my recommendations in a humble brag manner. So, was it the 16th? Yeah, 16th. I'm going to be talking to Def C.
Hey, nice.
Interviewing Def C. He's got a new. He had an EP called Scenic. He's got the deluxe edition, twice as much stuff, incredible stuff on there. It's a full album now, and it's excellent. And he's excellent, and he's actually dropping his next album on Backwoods Music.
Yep.
Under the tutelage of Billy Woods, with Messiah Music producing it, which is going to be incredible. I mean, it's amazing. It's great stuff. And so listen to Scenic Deluxe Edition, did Def C. And I an incredible talent and a really cool person. I can't wait to talk to him. I think near the end of the month, I'm going to be talking to Big Flowers about his album Big Smile.
Yeah.
And he thought me. He was like, I think you recommended him, but it was he gave me the download code, and I was like, I'll check it out. And at first, I was like, this is weird, and I just fell right into it. It's so nutty. It's so fun. It's so left field.
And it's so collaborative too.
Oh,
That was the thing. I like every song has 1 to maybe 2 collaborators on just about everyone. That because he sent it to me. And I was like, okay, I'll check it out. And I was just like half asleep. I remember when I looked at the track list and I was like, wait, who are these people? What do you mean Elusive?
Right. Who's
What do you mean
Jody?
Pink
What's
Saifu?
going on?
Who are these? Well, how did this happen? Why is this in my inbox for free? I mean, and also just a note, buy the album to anybody. I don't know if you actually bought it, because there's 3 other songs at the end. No, man, it's crazy. I didn't even notice. I think there's 3 solid tracks at the end, and I think they're all solos. 2 or 3. Yeah.
And shout out to Big Flowers. If you go to his Bandcamp, K Diggy, he sells pillowcases.
Probably sold out, but you can try. He sold herb bags.
Yeah, I mean, he's got.
Appreciate the hustle, man.
They're beautiful.
He's selling you Big Flowers toothbrushes. Like he's not playing. He's not playing with the merch. Check the Bandcamp. That is an interesting cat, and he's not going anywhere. That's fun. I can't wait to talk to him. So, yeah, those are my recommendations. Also, a weird show on HBO Max called Final Space. It's a cartoon. It starts out goofy and kind of lighthearted, and it gets it ratchets up and becomes sad and emotional, piece by piece. It's really quite fun. So, Mr. Rap Music Plug, do you have what are your recommendations?
So I'll start with a shameless plug on my own.
Good.
Big Flowers is also going to be joining my show. I think it's the end of May is what we decided on.
Yeah.
Don't have that. Yeah. End of May 31st. That should be out. I'm super psyched for that. As the reasons you described, I love his creative approach to the merch, especially when you think about the business side. I love it. All sold out, so he did well. Another shameless plug, but it's legitimately outside of Haram, that Vic Spencer album. I've been bumping Scenic Deluxe for sure. I've just been on a Kinsey Babyface Pearlist binge. Like I've not binged an artist like this in a long time. And it's mainly just because I'm just floored by how he's not being talked about. Yeah. And he has an interesting approach. His albums are sold are for pretty high prices, but he has a subscription thing, and some other artists do this, where you can subscribe on Bandcamp for like, I think it's like $5 a month, and you have access to like 9 releases, some old ones immediately, right, instantly to your inbox. I mean, to your Bandcamp, you can download it, and then obviously you get his new stuff, I believe, for free, and then you also get discounts. Anyways,
Wow.
the recommendation, because I've listened to his stuff nonstop. He has a ton of projects with August Fanon. 2 that is in my holy grails, but they're a little expensive, so I'm just trying to find the right time to buy them. But
Right.
N Platonic Energia. Don't ask me to explain what the fuck that means, but it is available for purchase for not at an extreme amount of money, and it is phenomenal. All produced by August Fanon. It's incredibly grimy, incredibly gritty, and this guy has like an abstract hip hop kind of vibe to his lyrics, but it is so gritty. It's so raw. This guy is one of the most talented artist I've heard in a long time, and he'll be joining the show too, start of May. So I am super floored, and check that fucking album out.
That's awesome. I've got a poll running on my Twitter. Which album would you most like to hear? And one of the options are Be Real and Nicholas Craven, Danny Brown and August Fanon.
I fuck with that. Danny Brown, August. Oh, you're not done? No, go.
I'm not done. Mark Specht and Primo, and Ghostface Killer and Navy Blue.
Ooh, those. Okay, so my finalists are definitely Danny Brown and Fanon, but Ghostface and Navy Blue. Okay, I say Ghostface and Navy Blue would make the best album, in my opinion. I think Ghostface has shown already. Like, I know Danny Brown and Fanon, they're too good. They'd make a great album, but we have proof that Ghostface can rap over some minimalist like samples, just the vocal like loop in. He's done that shit already, and I think that would be a beautiful combination.
I hear you. No, it's in the lead. The Ghostface and Navy Blue is in the lead.
Yep.
The chance to hear Ghostface get his stride again is just too much for a lot of people. They're like, let's go. Because Ghostface, when he's plugged in, it's different. It's different. He's one of the best. So, yep, good stuff. Any recommendations, K Diggy?
No, man. How about Taylor Swift's Fearless, Taylor's version?
Dude, is that a new album? I'm not gonna listen to it, but curious. Why is it Taylor's version? Is that like a deluxe?
No. What happened is, so like she didn't own the masters to her first 6 albums, and so her enemy bought her first 6 albums. The masters to her first 6 albums. So she just decided, you know what, I'll re-record each album note for note, and then re-release them where I own the masters. So I'll be able to make the money. I said that in jest. I mean, it's an interesting concept. Re-recording old material. But yeah, I mean, that's
it's K recommendation is what he told me when we first met, which is don't kiss people when they're sneezing. And I've always abided by it. Don't do it. Don't do it. So appreciate everybody. Shout out to Taylor Swift. K Diggy still loves you out there. Yeah. Tell your friends about us and stuff. Whatever.
So this concludes today's episode of the Rap Music Plug podcast presented by QLC TV. I hope this episode gave you some fresh new perspectives on the latest rap releases, as well as a recommendation for the next great rap record to add to your collection. If you're an artist looking to level up your career, getting more gigs, album sales, merch sales, whatever it may be, I would love to help you with that by providing you artist development and writing services. So if you're interested, contact me via email at qlctv.podcast@gmail.com or hit me up via Twitter or Instagram at Rohview, ROHVIEW. I would be honored to lend my expertise and help you grow your career as an artist. And also for regular rap fans that just want to hear more quality commentary on the genre, follow me on Twitter and Instagram as well. For exclusive content and updates related to the show, follow the Rap Music Plug podcast on Facebook to help the show grow and ensure that everyone's listening to the best rap music at all times. Follow the show on the podcast platform of your choice. Make sure you leave a review and rating on Apple Podcasts so that the show can be spotlighted by that wonderful algorithm and be exposed to more people. You can find all of this information along with exclusive playlists created by myself by clicking the link that's in the episode's notes. So that's all for today. Talk to you soon. Peace.